This is going to be one of the weirder videos that I do, as I can't really call this a build video. Class item spotlight probably fits a bit more, because from this one class item, you can make so many different builds, all of which have completely unique playstyles, but all of them are top tier at doing their niche and being a load of fun to use from how spammy they are. You want to be super aggressive, you want to be a heavy crowd controller, a tank for your team, this role is going to do a lot and do it well. I won't waste your time though, I have a feeling this is going to be a long one, so let's get into it. And Punk? Yeah, sounds good. First up, the class item role is Inmost Light and Armamentarium. There's no substitute, it's got to be that. But with focusing in the game now, you can head to Ghost in the Pale Heart, focus a perk, and you have a much greater odd of landing that role with your chosen perk. Also, there's no quick build here, but if there's a playstyle that you think you'll prefer more, there'll be a timestamp on screen to take you there. As it's present in every build you see in the video, let's quickly go over our class item before breaking down each different setup. Spirit of Inmost Light is our first perk, where on using an ability, you give your other two abilities increased regen, which can stack up to 2 times for 5 seconds. Grenade and Melee receive 400 or 800% increased base regen, and class ability gets 25 or 50% regen. Armamentarium, another grenade. For your weapons, these builds require nothing specific. If you have a gun that you want to use, go for it. However, some of these builds are quite dark or light ability heavy, so there will need to be differences in your gun elements for some versions you'll see. And lastly, I'm only doing ability descriptions once here, so if there's overlap between builds, the first time it's mentioned I'll fully describe it, but anything after that you have to skim back in the video if you want the full description. But I'm assuming you're watching this from start to finish. All that out the way, let's get into the first setup and what's probably my favourite out of the bunch. This one's all about damage and being super brawly, using grenades to prime groups of enemies with damage and jolt, and then following up with shatters, knockout boosted frenzy blades, all with some really cool ways to keep your combo loops going without costing you any abilities. Pulse Grenade is your first choice, both because of the great damage it does, but also from Facet of Dominance, giving it Jolt for extra damage and overload stun. Thrust is your class ability, which we want for its low cooldown to work with our mod setup and Inmost Light. For your melee, it's Frenzy Blade, which severs and comes with 3 charges, with each charge having its own unique cooldown. Not a requirement in the build, but both Blade Fury and Glacial Quake will refund all your melee charges on ending, helping your ability loops. Otherwise, whatever super you enjoy more or feel better suits a specific encounter, go for. For your aspects, Diamond Lance and Knockout. With Diamond Lance, if you do one of these things, you get a Diamond Lance, which you can throw to freeze or slam into the ground, freezing around you and giving you and allies 2 stacks of frost armor, with each stack being worth 4.5% damage resist, going up to 22.5. Diamond Lance here gives nice crowd control and shatter damage, but we're really wanting this as it gives both our powered and unpowered melees a damage bonus against frozen targets, which can stack with Knockout's damage bonus. Speaking of, Knockout makes it so that when landing a melee kill, you get a chunk of health, start health regen, and get amplified. But also on breaking an enemy shield, or dealing damage to an enemy below 30% HP, you get 100% increased unpowered melee damage, although this damage bonus is currently bugged, 50% increased powered melee damage, extra lunge range, and really importantly, your unpowered melee attacks now count as arc powered melee hits for 6 seconds. I'll come back around to that in a second. For Fragments, I already mentioned that we have Facet of Dominance, which makes Pulse Grenade apply Jolt, but we're also picking up Facet of Mending here, which gives us Cure on Grenade Final Blows, and Cure times 2 on Transcendence Grenade Final Blows. We're picking up 2 Fragments to drop cooldowns, and Facet of Awakening, which makes Elemental pickups on rapid Elemental kills, and Facet of Hope, which gives extra class ability regen while we have an Elemental buff. From this, you'll be making a load of Ionic Traces and Stasis Shards, and as Knockout gives Amplified, comboed with Inmost Light regen, we're almost always going to have 10 second or less class abilities pretty consistently. Facet of Command could be a great choice here too, as a replacement for Awakening, where on freezing or suppressing an enemy, you reload your weapons, and on killing a frozen or suppressed enemy, you spawn in a stasis shard or void breach. Nice thing here is that command doesn't have a stasis shard cooldown, whereas awakening does for every pickup. And lastly, Facet of Hope to give us an elemental buff depending on your equipped super when you pick up an orb. I switch this out whenever I use Thunder Crash as you've already got loads of Amplified in the build, but with Glacial Quake it makes stacking Frost Armor a lot easier, and with Blade Fury it gives Woven Mail, which is nice with how much healing we have in the build. Otherwise it's Void Overshield for Twilight Arsenal, which has just been buffed, or if you're really wanting to use hammers, it's Restoration. If you do want to add more survivability to the kit, you can sub in Facet of Protection and take out Awakening, but I never struggled much with staying alive, so this is up to your personal preference. Let's talk gameplay tips and interactions. Knockout is really here for one big reason. It's nice that we get a load of other benefits bundled into the aspect like healing, damage, amplified, but what makes it so good with Spirit of Immo Slides is that our arc powered melee hit from Knockout counts as a powered melee ability, meaning it can trigger Immo Slides. So without costing any abilities, we can get 800% bonus regen on our grenade and 50% regen on class for just doing Titan Punch and stuff. It's literally free ability regen. And on top of this, Frenzy Blade gives you a stack of Immo Slide for each enemy it hits, so if 2 or more get caught in a melee, it's instant max stacks. This build is one of the easiest builds to use for just super consistent Immo Slide and powered ×2. As for how you want to do combos, there's nothing too specific, but I really like to grenade, melee, class ability, and from there just try and use abilities as close together as possible to max out your inmost regen. Although this is a prismatic build, so as soon as you have Transcendence, you can blow all your melees and grenades, transcend, then pretty much everything will come back. I don't think Transcendence on ending gives back both your grenades, but I'm fairly sure that under your Transcendence grenade, those pulses are still getting Immo Light regen. From my playtest, when I end Transcendence, I normally have both my grenades back, so do with that what you will. But again, even in Transcendence, using your arc powered melee is really important. It helps loads in keeping ability uptime high, whilst letting you hold on to Frenzy Blades. Frenzy Blade is also where a lot of your champ killing power comes from. One of the guns I will recommend in this build and most setups that use Frenzied is a 1-2 punch shotgun, as you can set up an enemy with a Diamond Lance freeze, then Frenzied them, pulse grenade, then 1-2 punch Frenzied and repeat until that enemy is dead. It's no Syntho's Consecration, but there's still a lot of burst damage coming from the kit when everything comes together. This build also has amazing survivability and knockout and Facet of Mending, but it does need you to be fighting and landing kills. If you're playing around getting grenade and melee kills, you'll feel very tanky. The build rewards aggression with healing and super regen, and punishes passive play by giving you nothing. You've got to be in the thick of fights to make this build feel good. For mods, we're building big into super regen here. Double dynamo on the helmet, triple heavy-handed on the arms, and again, knockout melee counts as a charged melee, meaning it can spawn orbs from heavy-handed too. Charged up and resist or reserve mods on the chests, stacks on stacks, insulation and recuperation on the legs, and double distribution and utility kickstarts on the class item. Distribution and dynamo here give almost 8% of a super on using our class ability near enemies. With all the regen going on in the build, those class abilities will very quickly start making you supers, on top of just the regen you get by playing the game, but again, you've got to be up close to see benefits from both those mods. Right, that's one down, let's keep it rolling. This build is for Titans that have one direction they want to move in, forward. You're relying on Unbreakable to let you walk up to groups of ads for free, weakening them, then following up Unbreakable with high damage melees, and the satisfaction from this build is from what the name implies, Unbreakable. You're just this walking sponge for damage that gets away with some of the most ridiculous things from how much DR you can stack up. If it's not already obvious, the focus isn't Unbreakable, but this build has a way to make Unbreakable basically cost nothing, and I mean you can use Unbreakable, then end up with pretty much the same grenade energy you had once you started. And for context, when I say first and second grenade charge in my explanations, this is the first charge, and this is the second charge. That's really important here. Also, sorry for how much I'm about to say grenade, Unbreakable, and Armamentarium. Unbreakable works like this. You hold down your grenade and you summon a void shield in front of you. When you soak damage with the shield, you'll see a bar on the left side start filling up. Depending on how much damage the shield takes, shown by that meter, you release a void blast in front of you that deals damage, scaling upwards with damage the shield takes, with the blast consuming your entire grenade energy. Plus, whilst holding Unbreakable, you slowly build up void over shield and you get a bunch of damage resistance too. This shield also acts like a taunt, where enemies will have their aggro pull to you whilst you're holding this up. Armamentarium Unbreakable does not work like you think it does. As soon as you pull up that shield, no matter if you do it for literally a millisecond, Unbreakable fully consumes your first grenade and starts eating into the second one. In this clip, I use Unbreakable, let go halfway through what you think should be the first grenade, and it takes away from my second grenade. So it would seem like it's not good in that Armamentarium does the same thing as a build without an exotic, but costing more ability energy. There is a difference though, in that Armamentarium gets double the duration of regular Unbreakable. If you fully consume that first charge, you get another grenade charge to use during Unbreakable. If you let go of Unbreakable in the first grenade charge, you'll be left with however much energy was remaining in the grenade ability bar. If you let go in the second grenade charge, it always fully consumes that grenade. But to be honest, that double duration is not a good trade-off. I think it's weird that each grenade charge isn't its own individual Unbreakable, but that's just me. So far I probably haven't sold you on Unbreakable yet, but there is one big saving grace here. Just recently, Bungie announced another feature to Unbreakable in a TWAB that reads like so. Damage blocked by Unbreakable now generates grenade energy. When I read this, I first thought it would be on Unbreakable ending, you'll get a chunk of grenade energy for what damage you blocked, which it turned out to not be. What it actually regens is grenade energy whilst you're holding up Unbreakable, meaning the more damage you take, the longer the shield can be held for. This teeny tiny little change has made the Armamentarium Unbreakable combo go from being pretty much a negative to the build to now being so good that it can be the focus of an entire build. Without Armamentarium, your regen is capped at a single grenade, and once you release Unbreakable, it fully consumes the grenade. But with Armamentarium, that regen is not capped, meaning you can use Unbreakable, and because of the brand new grenade regen, start getting back energy for your next grenade. There's an important caveat though. You cannot regen your first grenade charge, and your first charge is always going to cost a full grenade. You can see here that I start with 2 charges, use Unbreakable, take damage, and the shield regens grenade energy up to the top. But you can see it hits the top of the grenade ability bar and doesn't go past. I let go of Unbreakable, and it costs a full grenade and some of the second. Overall a net loss and still worse than the base version. When we do this on our second grenade though, you see it starts draining energy, the shield takes damage, but now once it hits the top of the grenade ability bar, we regen grenade energy for our first charge. I let go of Unbreakable once I see it get as close to the top, and Unbreakable ends having cost basically no ability energy. Using that second grenade is what you want to be doing, as it costs nothing, whereas the first grenade will always at a minimum cost a grenade. I hope that made sense. I tried to explain that as best as possible, but it's one of those things where once you use it, it'll click exactly how you should be using it. And the higher you go in content where ads do more damage, the easier this is to proc. Right, that's one ability down. Let's do the rest of the build. Your melee here is Frenzy Blade, your grenade is Pulse, and your class ability is Thruster. Your second aspect can be one of 2 choices, either Knockout again for the free inmost regen, melee damage, healing, and amplified, or you can go Consecration here. It probably needs no explanation, but I will anyway. You slide, melee, and you scorch anything in front of you, melee again, and you're slammed down into the ground, igniting anything that's been hit by the Scorch. It's a super nice follow-up from Unbreakable, and the Scorch and Ignition it triggers will always give 2 times inmost regen, so it's great for cycling abilities. Plus, it's good damage, although if you do go Consecration, you need to rely on dart weapons to build up that Transcendence bar more. Either one here is a great choice, as they both add needed damage to the kit. For Fragments, Hope, Dominance, Mending, Purpose, and Awakening, or Command as a switch in. If you're running Consecration here, you'll get an extra Fragment slot, where you can add Faceted Protection for a 15% damage resist while surrounded, and 32% while Transcendent and Surrounded. For your super, same as before, Blade Fury and Glacial Quake can be nice for melee resets, otherwise either one of the one and done supers adds some really nice burst damage. And gameplay tips. Dying is a choice with this build. If you have Unbreakable 100% of the time, and you do here, you shouldn't be dying. Go into fights with the confidence that at any point you can just pull up Unbreakable, and once it ends, you'll have one right back. It's not crazy damage like Synthos, but it's tanky like nothing else in the game. When I'm playing this build right, I feel more tanky than someone using Song of Flame or any other roaming super. It's that consistent in just keeping you healthy and keeping you alive. For interactions, Inmost Light regen when using Unbreakable works really nicely here in that it doesn't get procced until you let go, meaning you can Unbreakable, and you have time to then Thruster and Melee, and you'll stack up Inmost regen on all your abilities. For actually using Unbreakable, I'll normally throw that first grenade charge as a pulse grenade, and then juggle that second charge as Unbreakable. It means you get Jolt given by Dominance, but also get to straight away start using the Armamentarium combo to get those 3 Unbreakables. Another thing with Unbreakable is that after a while of holding him, the game will no longer give you grenade energy returns for taking damage. You've got plenty of time before this kicks in, but you can't hold this grenade indefinitely. Not that you want to because you're trying to max out Unbreakable's damage quickly, so as soon as you hit that max, and you're at a point where you're guaranteed to get another grenade back, you're wanting to let go. Following an Unbreakable blast, then try and follow up with a Consecration or Knockout. Again, with Frenzy Blade Knockout, the only recommendation I make here is that you use a 1-2 punch shotgun to get some burst in the kit, plus now you're working Weaken into those combos for more damage. And lastly, with every Prismatic build, you get access to Transcendence, so you can blow all your abilities, cast that, and get basically full refreshes across the board. One slightly annoying thing with Transcendence is that for some reason Unbreakable doesn't work during it, but your Transcendence grenade is amazing anyway, so you probably want to be using that most of the time. For your mod setup, in both versions of the build you've seen here, you're wanting to run the same as the first build. Timestamp is on screen if you skipped over that first one. Only difference is that you're wanting to take out one heavy-handed if you're running Consecration, and sub in either a stat boosting mod or bolstering detonation. Right, that was a bit heavy. One more to go. This setup is entirely focused on crowd control. If you so much as look at an enemy, they should be either frozen or suspended. Although what I really like about this build is that typically with a lot of crowd control builds, they're kind of slow. Not here. You're able to have a load of CC, but do it all really quickly and you can get up close too. Abilities here are Shackle is your grenade, which suspends on landing, then breaks into smaller bowlers that suspend too. Thruster or Rally Barricade is your class ability. You have an option of these two here, as your first aspect in the kit is Drainer's Lash, or on using your class ability you suspend enemies. With a Rally Barricade, you get to spend in a line from where you cast from, and with Thruster, from where you dodge, you drop a Strand Knot that explodes and suspend anything hit by it. Lastly, Frenzy Blade is your melee. I came really close to recommending Shiver Strike here, but it currently feels like its knockback makes it so that the new AoE freeze you attach just seems to go off really far away from where you actually want it to be. If they drop or remove that knockback in PvE, this could be worth your time, but for now, Frenzied with its 3 charges, ability to get 2 times empowered from one swipe, and Sever makes it too good to pass up. For your super, same as before, it's up to you. Melee resets on Blade Fury and Glacial Quake on super ending. One thing I will say, light damage weapons here are really recommended for Transcendence energy, as there's already a lot of dark damage in the kit. Your Fragment setup here is slightly modified, hope and purpose are the same, but now you're wanting Facet of Devotion for light Transcendence on defeating dark debuffed enemies, Facet of Balance for ability energy on rapid light or dark kills, and Facet of Protection for damage resist. If you want to run a kinetic here, you can take Facet of Grace, but as Diamond Lancers can be made by stasis weapons, you might not want to. If not, take Facet of Ruin for the bonus shatter damage. Okay, gameplay tips. As for combos with this build, here's what I like to do. Apply some range CC, so Diamond Lance, Rally Barricade Drangers, or Shackle, then move in and Frenzy Blade, If you use Rally first, then Shackle enemies, and if you use Shackle first, then Dranger's Lash with either Thruster or Barricade. And I gotta be honest, that's pretty much it. This build is simple to use, but great at what it does. Lots of crowd control. For your mod setup, same as the second, but you're switching out one heavy-handed for bolstering detonation or a stat boosting mod. And that's the last build. Let's go over perks and weapons quickly. For perks you're wanting to have in the build, 1-2 punch with Frenzy Blade setups is really nice at giving those builds some burst, champs become much easier to deal with, a couple of knockout boosted 1-2 Frenzy Blades normally being enough to kill champs. Anything that mentions abilities is a great choice here too. Damage perks or ability regen perks alike, they're all good. For weapons, exotic or not, literally anything goes here. If you think it's good, go for it. From my playtest, Dragon's Breath for fire sprites and damage, Conditional for Diamond Lancers, Buried Bloodline for Devour, Choir of One. That's just a handful of what I tried, but I really do mean anything can work here. Your personal preferences are going to fit in nicely. And last but not least, seasonal artifact mods. If you're watching and it's not episode Revenant, you can skip ahead. Otherwise, if you are using any build here that has Diamond Lance in the kit, or using Faceted Purpose with Glacial Quake, there's so many good artifact options here. One with Frost is your first one, where stasis weapons get increased reload and stability while you have Frost armor. Free weapon bonuses for pretty much nothing, so why not? You want to pair this up with Wind Chill, where rapid stasis weapon precision hits give you Frost armor. Again, a free bonus for just doing what you would have done anyway is always nice. Although this is assuming you're using a stasis primary or heavy, so it's kind of up to you whether you run this. Armor of Eramis, where you emit a freezing burst around you when you have Frost armor, is a nice safety net to have, and a big one here, especially if you're using Glacial Quake, is Hail the Storm, where shattering stasis crystals releases shards, their damage and slow. This is a decent sized damage bonus to that super, so it's worth picking up. For the Unbreakable build, a big game changer here is Power from Pain, where defeating weakened targets gives you Devour. Unbreakable from Facet of Dominance applies Weaken, so you're able to get super easy access to one of the best survivability tools in the game, and again, you're just doing what you would have done anyway, and you get that bonus for free. And for any builds that have Facet of Awakening, Serve Cold is a good pick here, as it gives you class ability energy on picking up a stasis shard, and Void Breaches give you melee energy, but the Void Breaches will mean you need Void weapons. Supernova is another amazing pick, as on picking up a Void Breach, your next source of Void damage causes a Weakening Pulse, which plays back into Power from Pain for getting Devour. As for the other mods, GLs are pretty good right now, so if you want to use those, I'm not going to stop you. And that's it. I do want to end on saying that I encourage anyone to go into these setups, break them down, and build them back up into something they think they might like more. There's so many variations of grenade spam builds, all of which I can imagine would be really fun. I left out of this video a debuffing suppressor weakening grenade build, just because I hadn't refined it enough and wanted the video out sooner rather than later. In most light builds just always seem to hit that sweet spot of being super viable, but really fun to use. All of that is just to say, there's a lot of options. Go mess around with the setups, there are more recommendations than fixed set in stone builds. And I'm going to say this preemptively, there's a couple of bugs I found when using this build. Currently Knockout is not getting its unpowered melee damage bonus. I don't know why, it could be something to do with Titans getting bonus base melee damage at the start of Revenant, but it's a thing. Once this gets patched, those builds that have Knockout get even better. And during Transcendence, for whatever reason, you don't get 2 Transcendence grenades. I don't know why, and I really hope it's not intentional. Armamentarium says get an extra grenade charge, and then half my build doesn't get it. Listen, I get Transcendence grenades are good. Are 2 of them gonna skyrocket Titans into becoming the most broken, overpowered class that Destiny's ever seen? I don't think so. I really want to see this changed because it doesn't make sense to me that my exotic says guess an extra grenade charge and then it can't even do that. Anyway, I don't want to rant here. I don't like doing it, so that's about it from me. See ya.